Welcome back, folks, to WWE Network and Chill, episode 6 here today, talking about episode 6, season 1 from WWE Breaking Ground, as seen only on the WWE Network, of course. Picking up right where we left off, the last few episodes have talked about the Texas road trip, a focus on releases and promotions. The last episode ended with the promotions of Jason Jordan, Nia Jax, and Apollo Crews. However, with that came the release of Cal Bishop, who we had kind of built sympathy for throughout the last few episodes. An injured superstar, very passionate about, breaking through and becoming a breakout single star in WWE and making those NXT live events, hopefully NXT TV at some point. A kid, from what I saw, I had not really heard too much about him prior to watching Breaking Ground. But hearing from his peers, the officials, the doctors, Cal Bishop himself, it seemed like he had a lot of potential, but injuries really set him back. And that's not his fault. He's just injury prone. That's not really something that was his fault, something he did. He injured his shoulder twice. He had 3 different surgeries, or 3 different incidents, 2 shoulder surgeries. So it got to the point where they had to cut bait and let him go. Did not take it too well. He sat down with Canyon Ceman. Canyon Ceman said, again, still hilarious name, Canyon Ceman said they appreciated his efforts. He had added a lot. He had been valuable to the WWE's Performance Center, but they had to let him go. You've accomplished a lot here. Please leave here with your head held high. And he says, I understand. And he literally just walks right out the door. It's the most hilarious thing ever. Does not shake his hand. Doesn't even look Canyon Ceman in the eye. He just literally walks right out. And I'm sure it wasn't a case of he completely forgot or he wasn't paying attention. He just was pissed that he was being fired. So he gets escorted out the building. His very, optimistic attitude. Doesn't really say much, but it could have been a lot worse. He was a very emotional person, so he could have very easily wreck the place or talk back to Canyon Ceman, but he didn't. He walked out, packed his bag, and went home. So I respect him for that. But very sad to see him go. His peers were very sad to see him go as well. Some of them considered him a friend, saw a lot of potential in him, but there's some things you just can't control, and being injury prone is one of them. So after that little sad start to the show, we get more into the home life of many of the people in the show, and we get 2 more tours to Louisville and Nashville, going to one of the rock festivals. But even before that, the home life of Big Cass and Carmella, who had been together, who it was real. They were in a relationship, and either the past episode or the episode before that, which I had been completely oblivious to, before that episode. So we see more of them living, paying their dues, living in this really small apartment or whatever, eating steak and rice that had been cooked on the grill. Cass said it was shit. The rice sucked. So Bayley comes over, and we get more of a look into the Bay-Mello relationship, that friendship between Bayley and Carmella, which is really something amazing. These two have such great chemistry together. We have kind of seen it playing up a little bit on NXT TV. Only after this aired, though. Only after this aired do they really play up their, friendship outside of the ring. And they're just absolutely adorable together. They work really, really well together, both as friends, and they're best friends, both in the ring, outside of wrestling as well. And if you've ever seen Periscope or them on Twitter and stuff, it's really something that's really evident and apparent on Twitter that they're really good friends. But beyond that, you don't really know too much about it because we don't really see it exposed or talked too much about on NXT TV up until just recently. But it was cool to see more of their friendship, how well they work together, and whatever else. So like I said, so they go to Nashville and Louisville for 2 different tours, 2 different live events, one being a rock festival. It was raining. So because it was raining and sloshy and muddy and all gross, they had to go out and get new shoes. So Jason Jordan got these Jordan knockoffs, the cheapest knockoffs he could find, and they're called catapults, I guess, and he was getting his balls busted by Enzo Amore and a few others as well, but they worked well. They said that the shoes got the job done, and they worked to perfection, so he was really happy with his purchase of the catapult sneakers. That was pretty funny to say and see more of a personality of Jason Jordan that we really hadn't seen too much before, so that was pretty cool. So while in the area, and not in Texas, but I think in Nashville for the live event, they're there and they go to a ghost tour, and we see Baron Corbin, and we come to find out that he's very much into that weird shit. Like, he goes to these stores with his friend and sees all this voodoo shit, and these little miniature heads and stuff like that, stuffed cats and all this other weird shit. And we come to find out that Baron Corbin is very much into that stuff, which is very interesting. Again, more of a side of Baron Corbin that we do not see too often. And speaking of Baron Corbin and his match with Samoa Joe at the Rock Festival live event, wherever that was, I think Louisville. So we come to find out that Baron Corbin, one of his weaknesses is that in addition to being wanted to be on the main roster right then and there, and that's not what's holding him back per se, but it's not really the attitude that you need to have. Obviously everyone wants to be on the main roster, but Baron Corbin gets frustrated very easily when he finds out that other people get opportunities before him, despite the fact he's worked very, very hard to get where he's at and where else he wants to be. But one of his other weaknesses is showing emotion, and he reveals that in wearing a helmet in football, you're really taught to show no emotion whatsoever. In wrestling, it's a completely different dynamic. It's a all different ball game. It's an all new ball game in wrestling, and that you need to show emotion in order to connect with the crowd, whether it be as a baby face and get them behind you, or as a heel. You need to show that you just don't give a shit about them, and showing that through your facial expressions and whatnot. And that's how you're going to elicit heat. So he does that a little bit better in his match with Samoa Joe, a pretty good match from that live event. That's really something he needs to work on in the remainder of his time in NXT. So we get those live event tours. They talk a lot about that. I already talked about the Baymella thing. Love Preet we are introduced to on the show, a recruit from India that William Regal and Canyon Ceman picked up. He's got a great attitude. He has an amateur wrestling background. And per usual, we get a promo class with him in it. And he actually cuts a very, very good promo. Sami Zayn is doing some of the coaching, which is pretty cool. Sami Zayn says it's better to have an end goal in mind, which actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously he would know. But Sami Zayn says if you have a good, clear idea of where you're going with your promo, it's going to make it a lot easier to get there. And it's gonna come off a lot less choppy, a lot more clear, too. And that's a really, really, really good advice. And this guy, Love Preet's talking about how he's going to own NXT. He came here to own the WWE. And that's exactly what Sami Zayn said. He cut a really good promo, and it's obviously tough for him. I mean, it's impressive, too, because I don't know if he was really trained to become a pro wrestler in India. I think he just had wrestling background. But to really have that good of a promo right from the get-go is very impressive, very, very impressive, because he cuts a very good promo, in addition to the fact that he doesn't really know much English either. He doesn't know very fluent English, so he really cuts a great promo there. Sami Zayn gives him some great feedback, so good for him. I look forward to seeing more of him in the remainder of the show on Breaking Ground. So we see that I already talked about Baron Corbin. More of a briefer episode, not a shorter episode, but really not much, substance to the show. Just kind of a little bit of everything. Like I said, with Love Preet, with Cal Bishop getting fired, Big Cass and Carmella kind of showing their relationship outside the ring and living together, the Ghost Tour, the live event, all that other kind of stuff. Baymella. Bayley gets a shot at calling a match, which is actually really, really cool, and she makes a great point that she wants to get where she needs to be, which is headlining WrestleMania, or just being at WrestleMania, period, is where she wants to be. But it's the little things that you contribute to the business is that's going to get you where you want to be. And that is not only playing your part in the ring and doing your part there as a wrestler, but also helping out behind the scenes too. And Bayley's in a position of being the best woman of that crop of talent down there at that moment, that in holding the championship, she has other responsibilities. And at this point, at that Louisville show with the Rock City, the Rock concert show, at that festival they did, one of the responsibilities that she has is helping call the match between Alexa Bliss and Eva Marie. And she actually does a really, really good job. And she goes to Tensai for advice, like, should I tell them so much? Like, I feel like if I talk them too much, they might throw them off their game and give them too much to think about. And, Tensai says, yeah, that's a very good point. Try not to do that, because if, it might not throw you off because you already know so much about the business, but them, it might not be the same story. So she calls the match, and she gets another step closer to accomplishing her dream of getting to that main roster by showing that she can, wear these different hats, and being a producer, being an agent, being a trainer, being a wrestler, being a character, being all these different things. So we get to the next live event, which is in Nashville, like I said. American Alpha, Enzo and Cass have a very entertaining match, going to show that both teams are making some amazing strides, some tremendous strides. And then we get to a match between Eva Marie and Carmella. We cut to a shot of Carmella in her sit-down interview talking about how every time she gets knocked down, she's going to get right back up. This time, she does not get back up just immediately. She gets kicked in the head, and kicked in the head hard by Eva Marie on the outside. I believe giving her a concussion. I remember reading the report about it. It was in Nashville. And so it came to a moment at this point in the show where they had to stop the match because Carmella was legitimately hurt. They stopped the match due to her injury, and she was really fucked up. And Eva Marie, I don't know why she would even kick her in the head to begin with. I mean, that's the type of stuff that I know they're really serious about concussions nowadays. Why you would approve of somebody kicking someone else in the head? Especially at a time where moves like the punt kick from Randy Orton and the curb stomp are banned, Seth Rollins' curb stomp. Why would you allow someone to kick someone in the head? And maybe Eva Marie didn't know better. Maybe it was banned and she didn't even know any better. I don't believe she suffered any repercussions, nor should she be. It was an accident. Nothing against her, but hopefully it's not like a regular part of her act. I haven't seen enough of her matches to know, but it seemed like a very dangerous thing to risk, and Carmella got really hurt, and that ended the show. So that was a cliffhanger going into episode 7. Where does her health stand? Will it set back her, progress a bit? What are Bayley's thoughts on it? Big Cass's thoughts on it? Her boyfriend, her best friend? So we'll find out more about that in episode 7 of Breaking Ground. But overall, episode 6, another thumbs up. I mean, there really isn't a bad episode of this show. The only real thing about Breaking Ground is that each episode has something different to offer. In this episode, it was more of a mixed bag, not of good and bad, but just various different things, as opposed to in previous episodes, we had more of a centralized focus on guys like Mojo Rawley, Baron Corbin, Devin Taylor, Noof, all these other characters, Jason Jordan, Tyler Breeze. This episode didn't really have a central focus. If anyone was a central focus, if there was any really one MVP of this episode, it had to be Carmella, in a relationship with Big Cass and getting injured and whatnot. And also Baymella too. So I would say Carmella was kind of the bigger focus of this episode, but we also had focuses on, obviously, the release of Cal Bishop, how he reacts to how his peers react to it, how peers react to in the releases of someone in the Performance Center, how it affects their training and whatnot, their mindset. We also got a bit of a insight on the live events in Nashville and Louisville. The Ghost Tour was pretty cool. Not really relevant, but a cool little aside with the superstars. That was pretty nice. Bayley kind of honing her craft in a different way and becoming an agent for the Eva Marie, Alexa Bliss match, the Baymella relationship, Love Preet signing with WWE, how his progress is coming along. So a very different episode of Breaking Ground, a lot different than the previous episodes, but still a worth watching one, well worth the recommendation, as all the episodes are. Like I said, as I've said before, the entire series is worth watching in chronological order on the WWE Network, which is why I'm doing these reviews, to recommend you watch these shows because they're really freaking good. So that is Breaking Ground, Season 1, Episode 6. Check it out on the WWE Network. And in my next video, I'll be covering, obviously, Episode 7 of WWE Network and Chill. I'll be covering Episode 7 of Breaking Ground. So until then, guys, be sure to check out the Twitter, Facebook, YouTube right here on YouTube, all the other videos available on the channel. Videos pretty much going up every single day of the week, so check it out. Appreciate the support. All the links down below in the description box down below. Check out all the links, the website, Facebook, Twitter, everything else. I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.